Hello friends, it's Chari. Today I have a very special pet sympathy card to share with you using the new Over the Rainbow interactive die from lawnfawn. So of course, we're going to start with the Over the Rainbow interactive die. You can see that here. For this card, I thought I would go way far back to our very first set, Critters in the Burbs, because it has some really cute pets. I'm using the big scripty words for my sentiment because I always love sharing hugs as a sympathy sentiment, and I'm also using the new rainbow sentiments from the newest release. So I have loaded up all of my images from Critters in the Burbs into my Misty, and I will be stamping with lawnfawn jet black ink so that I can color with my alcohol markers. And I am stamping that little flower twice. I'm going to put those on the tree. So for my dog, I always like coloring this dog in kind of yellow colors, almost like a golden retriever. So I have a Y24 and a Y23 for my colors of my dog. I'm also going to pull in that YR21 for a little bit lighter, and I'll use that on his muzzle as well. Then I have a little black nose, and I went back with that YR24, which is the darkest, and added some little spots. I think it's always fun to add some texture to our little animals like this. Now for the cat, I'm going with some warm grays. So I have a W5 and a W3 for my shadow and my blending out. Then I'm going to come in with a W7, which is a bit darker, and add some stripes to this little guy. Finally, I am going to give him a pink nose. I'm also going to make the nose of the rabbit pink and my flowers that will go on my big tree. Next, my little snail, I pulled out some Olo purples for his shell. And then I'll color the body here in a minute. I jumped over to my bunny rabbit. I wanted this to be kind of a creamy white color, so I went with the E02 and E00 to blend it out. I'm leaving his tail white. Then of course we have that tennis ball. I wanted that kind of classic bright yellow tennis ball color. So I picked out the YG21, but I wanted a little bit of shadow, and I felt like this Olo was the best shadow for this one. So I mixed a Copic and an Olo together. And then I have the body of the snail with some green. And then now I'm going to color just the trunk of the tree. You can color the leaves as well, but I'm going to paper piece that together with some watercolor wishes paper. So I'm using the E37 for the shadow, and then I'm blending out there along the trunk with that E35. And for my bird, I'm using B23 and B21. Then I will grab the coordinating dies for Critters in the Burbs, and I will cut out all of my images. Again, I'm leaving the tree white because we're going to layer some pattern paper over that. So now I'm moving on to the pieces of my Over the Rainbow. You can see I've already cut the rainbow mechanism. I'm going to use some spiffy speckles for my sky, watercolor wishes for my ground, and I'll use that really rainbow stripe for my rainbow stripes. So I want to cut this piece of spiffy speckles down to 4 inches by 5.5 inches. So it's slightly smaller than an A2 size card. This is going to be the sky, where I'm going to cut out the opening for my rainbow. I'm also going to cut the big pull tab from the same Spiffy Speckles paper so that everything matches. And I also cut one from white cardstock. Since I am using pattern paper, which is a little bit thinner, I wanted that tab to be nice and strong, so I will layer these two together, which you'll see that in just a little bit. Now for the rainbow stripes that go on the rainbow mechanism that moves. I'm using the really rainbow yellow brick road paper because the rainbow is kind of already figured out for you. So I'm just trimming this down to 4 3/4. That's really the only width I need to cut this little stripe that you see I have the die there for. And you could pick any 6 colors on this piece of paper that you wanted. So I'm going to cut out 6 rainbow stripes for my rainbow. And look, you can get a lot of rainbows just out of this one piece, and this is only half a sheet of 12 by 12. I also have the little decorative piece that goes at the bottom, and I wanted this to match on this card, so I cut it out of the same spiffy speckles paper as the sky. You could cut this out of a contrasting color if you wanted it to kind of stand out. And this goes at the bottom down here, so I'm putting 2 pieces of the 1/8 inch double-sided tape, and I'll just layer that piece along the bottom. Then I'm going to take that same double-sided tape and put a piece on every one of these stripes of the rainbow. And I did find that putting that decorative piece on the bottom first was very helpful because you could just butt the ends of the rainbow right against it, and then they all lined up perfectly. So I'm just making sure those are nice and burnished down, and then I will pull off that liner paper and place each of these strips on the strips of the mechanism. I think this rainbow has a lot of possibilities. You could do all warm colors, you could do all cool colors, you could do primary colors, you could just pick two and make them go back and forth like a stripe. There's lots of options that you could do on this really fun over the rainbow die. So once I have all of my colors on here, I want to kind of train my paper to bend, and that's what I'm doing here. Now, one thing I did forget to do is to kind of give a little fold at the top and the bottom, a valley fold to help this move a little better. But once my card was together, I kind of just fixed that problem a little bit once I bowed up the rainbow. And then here is the tab. Again, I did a white cardstock tab, and I'm just layering over that spiffy speckles so that I have a nice strong tab to pull, but it matches my pattern paper for my background. You could make this a contrasting color if you wanted. It's going to pop up out of the top. That's where you're going to see it. So you could make this any color you wanted. We also need the little tab that tells the recipient to pull it. So I cut this out of scrap of that really rainbow pattern paper as well. This is that darker red, but that color scheme's kind of already put together for you, so I really utilized it for some of the other colors in my card. Now, before I assemble this, I want to add my sentiment from the rainbow sentiments to the top of this tab. This is the part that is going to be revealed when you pull the tab and that rainbow gets set into motion. This little sentiment will be at the top. And since I'm creating a pet sympathy card today, of course, I went with the sentiment that says, "I am always here for you." So now we can start to put these pieces together. So I'm going to flip my rainbow over and add some of that double-sided tape to this little tab at the bottom. Make sure that's nice and stuck down. I'll pull off that liner paper. And then you're just going to line this up with the very bottom of this tab that the sentiment is on. So you can see there how this is going to match all the blue around, but again, it could be a contrasting color if you wanted it to be. Now I need to cut an opening on my front panel for my rainbow to shine through. So I'm just kind of figuring out where I want it. Over here to the right side was my intention, so I'm using the die in the Over the Rainbow set that cuts that rectangular opening, and it has those two little prongs at the top. You want to make sure that the very top of the die is lined up with the very top of the paper. Those prongs are going to stick up past the top just to make sure you get a clean cut for that little tab. You can see how that is going to fit right in there. So now we need to put our double-sided adhesive tape on this white piece that you see at the top. So you want one piece that goes under the tab, and then I'm going to put a little piece on each side of the tab. You can see there what that looks like. We'll pull off that liner paper, and then we are going to put this behind our panel and stick that adhesive to the back side of the panel. So that rainbow fits right in that rectangle perfectly. You can see the tab lines up with that little notch at the top. We're going to make sure that's stuck down, and now you can see how it's going to slide. So of course, right now we need a panel in the back that you're going to see when you slide it up. And again, I wanted mine to all match, but you could make this a contrasting color if you wanted. So I cut another piece of that spiffy speckles to 4 inches by 5 1/4, And now I'm adding foam strips. So you want foam strips on each side of that pull tab and around the edges. So I'm just making sure those strips go all the way to the bottom. Then I'm going to add one along the bottom, right underneath our big pull tab. This is just to support it all the way around. And we're adding foam so that this can be popped up from the card base a bit so you can really get your finger in there to pull that tab and you're not struggling to get a hold of it. I also added one more piece kind of in this middle here just to support it. Then we're going to pull off all the liner paper for all of these strips of foam, and we're going to layer this right on top of that piece of spiffy speckles that's 4 inches by 5 1/4. And it's going to line up perfectly because that's the same size as our front panel that we cut the rainbow out of. So just carefully line this up. And now you've kind of made your over the rainbow sandwich. See how it slides perfectly. And you can see there that matches down in that opening that it creates. And of course, if you wanted something contrasting, you could use a different piece of paper. So now I have my watercolor wishes. This is the green. I'm going to be using this for my ground and for my tree. So I've just cut this to about 2 inches. I'm going to cut a piece that is 4, so it's the same width as my panel. I will be using a border die to cut the top of this little hill here in a minute. And then for my tree, I'm just stamping the top of the tree onto the watercolor wishes. I picked an area that kind of had some variation. You can see there's some dark areas, and I'm just going to fussy cut this out. Now I'm using the watercolor wishes because it already has that watercolor look. You could also watercolor a piece of paper or ink blend or use any kind of pattern paper to get a really fun look on this tree. I just think that it's a great tree to do this little technique on because you have that really big solid area without any details in there. And then I just used a black pen to kind of close in those 2 little areas where the trunk comes in because on the stamp there is not a line there, but now it looks like there is. Now I need to trim my tree because it overlaps my rainbow and I want to trim it right at the edge of my rectangular opening. So I'm just marking that with a pencil and then I'm going to use my paper trimmer to cut me a nice straight line and I will just erase that pencil line off of that pattern paper. And now you can see that's going to go right against my rainbow. Now for the sentiment, I always like to send hugs or give hugs for a sympathy card. So I'm using the sentiment that says big hugs from Big Scripty Words. I like these because they're big, bold, and have coordinating dies. Now I am stamping this on white to begin with, but I did end up changing that to a piece of colored paper in the end because I thought it was a little too harsh on the white. But I'm using it as a guide to figure out how high up to cut my little stitched hillside. So I just want to make sure there is enough space for my critters to sit and for my sentiment. So I'm just cutting that out with a simple stitch hillside border die. And this is going to go down here at the bottom. So our rainbow is going to slide behind it, so we need to give it a little space. We're going to add some foam to this as well. So I've added foam across the bottom because that's going to be below the rainbow. I laid this on here to see where to put my foam and realized it's flipped. So I need to actually turn it upside down to get it correct. So I moved my little strip over. That's going to be on the right side. And flipping it over like this is just a little trick I use to figure out where to put my foam, but since my rainbow is not centered, I needed to make sure it was upside down. Hopefully that makes sense, but now I have foam on both sides. I also have a little void in there where the rainbow is and where the tree is going to go. So I can just add my tree as well directly to that background piece right up against the edge of that rectangle of the rainbow, and I'm tucking the end of it right behind my hillside. And I will go ahead and add my little flowers to the tree. But before I add the rest of my critters, I realize I need to get this on to a card base. And also this is where I decided that big hugs on the white was a little too stark. I wanted to bring in some more color and tone it down a little bit, so I'm using a scrap piece of the Really Rainbow Yellow Brick Road paper, which is the same I used for my rainbow stripes, and I'm going to stamp and die cut my sentiment out of this sort of peachy color right here. And this really, I think, toned it down a little bit and made it blend in with the scene that I was creating a little bit better. So I will just add this with a little bit of liquid glue right along the bottom of the grass that I created. And that looks so much better. I like that it matches the flowers as well. But I want to go ahead and put this onto a card base. Again, I'm using foam, so everything's kind of popped up and there's a lot of room back there for you to grab a hold of that tab to pull. And I'm just using a white card base so that I have a white frame around this cute little scene that I'm creating. And look how that works so perfectly. So now we're ready to add all our little critters. So I'm using foam squares behind their heads because again, my grassy hill is popped up. And then I will just attach the bottom of them with a little bit of liquid glue. Now you do want to make sure that they don't get in the way of your rainbow. So that's why I was making sure that that left ear of my bunny was not in the way of my rainbow. Then I have my cute little snail. I'm going to add my dog, but I actually end up moving him just a little bit. I put him way over here to the left because I kind of forgot that I wanted to add that little ball. So I'm going to add my cat, and then I'm going to pop my dog off and scooch him over a little bit. So again, we're making sure that we put them just shy of the rainbow because we want to make sure that rainbow has space to move. And I'm going to tuck him behind this little cat's tail. And then I will add my little tennis ball over here on the ground. And then finally, I have my little bird to go up in the sky. And I wanted some little hearts. We always need our little hearts. These, I want to make sure that I only put the glue on one of the stripes. So I have 3 little hearts from the Hearts and Stars Skinny Tag Die cut from guava cardstock. And I'm just adding them to a couple of the stripes of my rainbow. And it will move perfectly because they're not glued to more than one stripe. And of course, we need our glitter. So I added glitter to the flowers on the tree. I added glitter to my tennis ball and the snail shell, and of course, the hearts. And then here is my finished Pet Sympathy card with that rainbow bridge that you pull and it moves. I think it's so pretty and will really brighten someone's day. I always feel like we need to send brightness and love, especially with a sympathy card. But this same design could be used to brighten anyone's day for any reason. I also think it would be fun to customize the pets for the person that you are sending it to. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.